The negotiation table aboard the Concord Station was round, which the Kethrani ambassador found insulting. Round tables implied equals, and the 5 delegations seated around it did not believe humanity was their equal. They believed humanity was, at best, a curiosity. A species that had stumbled into the galactic community 40 years ago with slower engines, thinner hulls, and a tendency to apologize before speaking. Captain Marcus Webb sat at the human seat, hands folded, saying nothing. Beside him, Ambassador Lila Torres kept her expression pleasant and unreadable. They had been warned this summit would be a formality, 5 species deciding politely whether Earth deserved a seat on the Interstellar Trade Council or whether it should remain a protectorate, escorted and managed like a child who'd wandered too far from home. The Drask delegate spoke first, his voice a low rumble translated into flat, clipped English. The Ashcrest Dominion carries 900 fusion cannons. It has ended 3 wars without firing a shot because no one was foolish enough to make it fire 1. The Velmiri representative, sleek and iridescent, tilted her head. Our Silverthorn class outmaneuvers anything in this quadrant. Speed is the only armor that matters. One by one, they boasted. The Karathi spoke of shielding that had never failed. The Ansarai spoke of a dreadnought that had glassed a moon as a warning and needed no second warning after. The Petra Concordate's delegate, a quiet, calculating woman named Vex Ilarion, simply said, "Our fleet does not need to boast. It is simply the largest ever built." Then the table turned to Webb. "And you, Captain?" the Drask said, almost gently, the way one might speak to a man about to embarrass himself. "What does Earth bring? We have seen your ships, adequate, small. What is it you call your flagship?" Webb almost smiled. "The Iowa," a pause. The Velmiri representative's crest flattened in something like amusement. "You named a warship after a landlocked farming province?" "We named it after a lot of things," Webb said. "Would you like to see her?" The delegates exchanged glances, the particular kind of glance that says, "Let the child have his moment," and agreed. Mostly out of boredom, to reconvene at the observation deck. Ambassador Torres had timed it perfectly. She always did. When the 5 delegations filed onto the observation deck, the stars outside were empty, ordinary. The Drask made a small, dismissive sound, already composing the report in his head. Earth's flagship failed to arrive. Then Torres tapped her comm. "Bring her home." Space didn't so much open as admit that something had always been there. The Iowa didn't drop out of warp with a flash of light or a dramatic boom. She simply became visible, the way a held breath becomes visible in cold air. Because she had been sitting silent and dark less than 400 kilometers off the station's hull the entire time, running cold, running quiet, watching the summit unfold through sensors so passive that not one of the 5 advanced fleets in the sector had noticed her. She was not the largest ship in the room. The Petra Concordate's dreadnought, visible on a side monitor, could have swallowed her twice over, but she was covered, stem to stern, in point defense turrets that were already tracking, not the Iowa's own targets, but every ship those 5 delegations had brought to the summit, politely, without malice, the way a man rests his hand near a holster, not because he intends to draw, but because he wants you to notice that he could. 96 kilometers, Webb said quietly. Keel to bow. She doesn't outrun the Velmiri. She doesn't outturn the Korathi. Her shields aren't the strongest in this system. He let that land. What she does is remember. On the main display, Torres pulled up a schematic, hull layer after hull layer, an armor scheme that looked almost primitive, plate over plate over plate, backed by shock-absorbing gel matrices humanity had stolen, frankly, from the design of a turtle's shell and a bulletproof vest and stubborn. "Old-fashioned steel. Every species in this room builds ships that win by never getting hit," Torres said. "Fast enough to dodge, shielded enough to shrug it off, powerful enough that no one tries." She looked around the table. "We built a ship that assumes it will get hit, because 40 years ago, when we still couldn't leave our own solar system, that was the only kind of ship we knew how to build. We've been designing for the worst day since before we had days worth talking about." The Ansarai delegate frowned. "That is not superiority. That is fear." "It's both," Webb said. "The Iowa has taken direct hits from 3 pirate cruisers, a rogue Karathi raider, and once, 4 years ago, from an asteroid field that shouldn't have existed on any chart we had." He nodded to the display, where damage logs scrolled, red marks healed over in gray. patch after patch, scar after scar. She's still here, every single time she came home. Not because she's the fastest or the biggest or the best shielded, he met the Drask's eyes. Because we built her to survive being wrong. And in 40 years, gentlemen, we have been wrong a lot. Silence settled over the observation deck, broken only by the low hum of the Iowa's engines drifting through the hull like a heartbeat felt through the floor. Vex Ilarion, of the Petra Concordat, was the first to speak, and when she did, her calculating tone had shifted into something quieter. You built a ship that expects to lose battles. We built a ship that refuses to stay lost, Webb corrected. The vote, when it came 3 hours later, was unanimous. Earth was granted its seat, not because the Iowa was the strongest ship in known space, but because every delegate in that room had, for one long moment, looked at a scarred, unglamorous vessel built by a species that had spent 40 years getting knocked down, and realized with quiet unease that they were looking at something that simply would not stay knocked down. Boasts, it turned out, were easy. Coming home was not Iowa had done it every time.